Hi all, Nicole here with Dear Teacher Instructional Coaching. So in the past couple of episodes, I have showed you some online free resources that you could not only use in the language arts classroom, but that you could also use across content areas. So I first had showed you commonlit.org, last episode was readworks.org, and then today I'm going to show you a site called Newsela. This is Newsela's homepage. So you will notice on here that they have Explore, Good News, there's an Educator Center, and then there is like a featured article with some of the latest news. Newsela boasts having very up-to-date, very recent articles. And their content, as you can see here, is multidisciplinary, though I would say as far as the aligned standards, it aligns with our reading standards. So even though it is multidisciplinary, you will see tangible reading results instead of very specific content-focused standards. The other thing about Newsela is it is entirely nonfiction articles. So if you were wanting kids to really dive into like poetry or things like that, this would not be the site you'd want to use. But it is a very awesome site for our students. You can see that you can search for, very specific things. They have a tab for election 2020 if you want to open that can of worms. Otherwise, as you're searching, you can see for news, let's say, for example, let's click on kids. So if I'm trying to find content, and I can see articles that I could use. I can see entire text sets. So the text set that is about kids, you can see all 733 articles. So if you wanted to save the entire text set, you could. You can see what standards would be in there, which it says no results found. So I'm not sure why that's stating that. And then if there are any videos in this kids section, as my computer takes a while to load, you can see different things that you could assign to students as far as videos would go as well. So let's say, for example, that you find a article that you maybe want to look into. So I'm going to click on this 7-year-old goes online to spread hope to kids with medical issues during the pandemic. So there's a few things that you should notice with this. Up in the upper right-hand corner, this is where you can adjust the Lexile. And they have 5 Lexile levels per article. So you could select maybe about where your students or group of students would be at. If you wanted to create your own text set and add it to that, you absolutely could. But you can see now that the text level is at a 4th grade reading level. I could bump it up, 5th grade. And if I go to the max reading level of this one is at text level 6. So it is still 6th grade upper elementary school. And you would be able to assign that to your students. There's a couple of other things you can do with these. If you're assigning like the activities, you can have them complete the writing prompt. And the cool part with this is you can edit it. So if you don't like a specific wording or you think like the question isn't really focused on what you want it to be, you can edit this writing prompt. And then there is also a comprehension quiz that the students would be able to take. Okay, let's say that I want to assign this article. So I'd go to the drop down and assign. So I would create the assignment. I can pick which class to add it to, and then this is where I'd give my students instructions. So maybe, for example, we are talking about the topic of kindness. So maybe I will say highlight evidence of kindness. Oh my goodness. Kindness in green. Just as an example. Maybe if I want them to put in an annotation, I could say in an annotation, explain why that evidence shows kindness. So they have to explain their thinking a little bit. So I can either save it as a draft and come back to it, or I can just go ahead and assign it to the classes that I selected, and bam, it is right there. So I'll be able to see, like as far as assignments go, this is actually, if you notice, I'm in my binder. And that's what this is. So there's a teacher binder and a student binder. So students have their own, and then teachers, your binder is basically all classes. So you can watch live what kids are going to end up, what they've got going on like in that moment, or just kind of how they're doing generally. So you can see the activity feed. And I don't have my students in here, so you won't see, but you can see like if they submitted a quiz or annotated on an article. And then this is where you would see like their reading summary data. So if I go back to assignments, here's the other thing when you're finding content. So I just found that article on like the news page when I went to news and then kids. However, you can find text sets that are made by other teachers. So instead of putting all of the work in yourself, where you can find a whole bunch of different articles and create your own text set, that's totally fine. But you can go ahead and take a look at ones that teachers have already created. So let's say I'm still talking about young people changing the world. Are you next? So I noticed, let me go back. I went into that kind of quickly. You can see that there's 7 articles in this and that I do have it saved. So this is something that I want to make sure that I keep and go back to. So it is saved. I can share it. I can print it. And then you can create an assignment and it'll take you to the same screen that I had before, except it will have all 7 of these articles without any instructions, so you can type your own. Now, I really like the instructions on here. So they have their big question, their supporting question, their instructions, which is very personalized. Select 3 additional articles you'd like to read on your own. Extension resources. So are we trying to get kids to a 4? Maybe take a look at extension activities, exactly the standards they're practicing, and then what we would expect the kids to be doing. So first class period, we're working together and reviewing Newsela tools. So we know the first class period of work time, we're going to be pretty much together. And then the second class period onward is very much student-led, which would be a little bit more of that personalized learning style. So let's say, for example, they finish all of these, next 4 in 2 days, then you'd go ahead and send them to those extension resources, which is super cool. So if you don't want to edit, so if you wanted to edit these instructions, you would create the assignment. But if you want to keep this, you can just copy it. Do you want to copy? Are you sure you want to copy this? You bet I do, because it's awesome. Thank you, Melissa Katz. So now that I have that copied, that means all of this information is saved. Okay? So there's a couple things I could do. Let's say, for example, that I want the students to see all of this information. I want them to see the standards. I want them to see the estimated time. I want them to see the extension resources, and I want this entire thing shown. You can go ahead and share. Google Classroom or Mind, you can email it to them. Or if you have a different learning management system, like my district uses Schoology, I can copy the link and post the link onto Schoology instead. And that way, this is everything the kids will see. So if you wanted to go ahead and edit, for example, you could go in and you can change some things around on here if you wanted to. Okay, so you have that option. So that will show you everything. Now, if I just go to create assignment, it's going to keep that this is my copy, the class I would assign it to. But then notice all of those instructions that were written are gone. So you can do one of two things. You could copy and paste all of this. However, do you see that these are hyperlinked? Those are not, the hyperlink will not copy over. So maybe, for example, you're going to put these supporting questions into a sway or a Prezi, or, have a gallery walk around the room where kids are answering those questions. So there's different ways that you can do these questions and introduce your topic. And then maybe the extension resources. For a lot of people who do personalized learning, students have to first achieve that level of proficiency. So you're kind of watching them and guiding them along the way, and then they finally get to that 4, and then that's when you give them these extension resources. So maybe you just keep these to yourself and send them individually to students, or have students pick from those 3 at that point. Okay, so this is nice because you have everything here, and maybe when you create the assignment, all you want to do is just have these instructions. So I just Control-C to copy it, create assignment, instructions, Control-V. Now I know, this is kind of the pain about Newsela. You'd have to go back through and make sure that you put in where you need to make sure you have your steps, maybe adding spaces in between things. So this is how you would have to edit it. I have not found, besides sharing the entire link with my kiddos, I have not found a slick way to do this besides this. And I like having everything saved. For me, I like having that copy feature. That is really nice. And I think with the extension activities, I wouldn't want to put those out to students right away, just because they have 5 things to be doing here. And I would probably also like to put in the timeline for kids, or maybe the timeline would be a different section of my board. This is really a teacher preference, but that is something that is kind of a stinker, is that when you copy it, it is saved to your personal content, and you can edit those things as you see fit. But when you create the assignment and actually assign it to your kids, those instructions do not copy over. So now when I click into it, you will see those instructions. The last thing I'm going to show you is probably my favorite thing of Newsela, and that is the Educator Center. So the Educator Center, you can see, talking about teaching the news. How do we go about that? And it is a webinar. You can see a distance learning toolkit for admins. And then they have a whole section on distance learning. So remote teaching toolkit, a family letter, flip kit. Here's something else cool too. Student facing resources. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this little lesson that says Central Idea by Alice Montgomery. It is 7 minutes and 25 seconds long. You can see that it is a video. And once you go to it, you can go ahead and click watch. It does have information for you. use this video directly with students to model how close readers pay attention to the main idea of the text. And they give you different ideas that you can use with this. So you just click watch, and then you'll be able to preview it yourself. And then if you want to share this specific link with your students, you got to make sure that you do copy the link before you would end up pasting it. So they have a couple of other really cool ones. I'm going to just go back. So the getting started, there is also some really cool stuff and just the welcome, the essentials that you can go into. I like the ready to go assignments too, which is something that's really nice. But if I went to see more in the getting started with Newsela, and something that was very helpful was this essential tips, assignments, annotations, and write prompts. So you can go ahead and read through that article, and it's super nice because they give you how do you actually create it? How do you view the student work? What are some tips that they provide to you? Explaining annotation a little bit better and diving into those kinds of things, and then being really specific with some tips and tricks for teaching the writing prompt. So even though I said that this is aligned and standards aligned with our reading standards, this is multidisciplinary. And for those teachers who say I'm not a writing teacher or I'm not a reading teacher, even though in all contents we should be reading and writing, this is really nice because it combats that argument. This gives you tips and tricks to help you out with how you can, get these students to write and read in a critical manner. So I just thought that specific one was very cool, and I needed to show you that. And that's it for Newsela. So you can kind of take a look at which one of these you like the best, which one maybe you would want to try to incorporate during the school year. And I encourage you to sign up for at least one of these 3 after looking at these features and playing around with it, trying to implement it maybe in your first semester, just for another touch point for your students. I know that plans are coming out now for schools across the nation, and the hybrid model is something that seems to be very popular. So think about how you can utilize some of these online resources to make your life just a little bit easier. Dear teacher, you are amazing.